Hello, everybody, and welcome to Proud Malcontent. I'm Pete Bell, and I am a proud malcontent. It's Wednesday, 10th of September, 2025. I had to remind myself of that on Saturday when I was in Edinburgh at the AUOB March and rally. Particularly at the rally, where the speeches, I have to say, were atrocious, apart from one exception, and that was Sarah Salyers, who had a very important announcement to make. Apart from her, and she was on last, I believe, she was the last speaker, so I had to hang on. Otherwise, I might as well have just gone home because I'd heard all those speeches before 13 years ago, and I was getting really, really annoyed with it all. Because there weren't speeches about independence at all. There were speeches about getting elected. There were electioneering speeches, just using independence as an electioneering device. Want independence? Vote for me. Want independence? Vote for my party. You want independence? Use this voting strategy. And I got really, really annoyed with it after a while. This is nothing against AUOB, but the whole thing, has to say, I admire the way they organise these things, but the whole thing has just got really, really tired. Okay, enough about that. What we're looking at today. What are we looking at today? Yes, a couple of things. This is actually going back a bit because with being in Edinburgh on Saturday, you lose a full day. You lose pretty much a full day because when you have to commute from Perth. That's a big chunk of travelling time on top of the time that you're actually at the event. So I fall behind with things. But there was a rather interesting column. Richard Walker, formerly of the National, a very well-known figure. And he sometimes writes very interesting columns in the National. And that was the case on Friday, where we had a column, and the headline you can see is 3 reasons why focus on an SNP majority for Indy Ref 2 is flawed. And I thought the headline alone was interesting. And made it worth reading. So I did that. And as usual, I made a few notes on what it was that I wanted to comment on. And as usual, I've lost the highlights. But Richard is saying that he gives 3 reasons why making the Indy Ref 2 dependent on an SNP majority is a bad idea. He says it's problematic. He doesn't come quite out and say that it's a bad idea, I don't think. 3 reasons that is problematic. 1, there is nothing to suggest Westminster would recognise that precedent. It has ignored pro-independence SNP Green majorities in the Scottish Parliament consistently since 2016. Yep, right enough. The Scottish Parliament's electoral system was devised to make an overall majority very difficult to achieve. The 2011 election proved it was possible, but few believe that result will be replicated in 2026. Count me as one of those few. Not one of those. I'm not one of those few who believe it will be replicated. Sorry, I'm getting a bit confused here. I see very little chance of 2011 being replicated, although John Swinney's trying to sell it very hard. He's trying to get those votes by telling people we have to make it like 2011. I don't know. I don't know that people are responding to that at all. I don't sense it. And the third reason, if the SNP fail to win that majority, Westminster will seize on that as proof Scotland has rejected independence according to the method defined by the SNP itself. It would be impossible to claim voters support Scotland's right to choose when that question was not asked. And that is possibly the strongest point of the lot. This is a huge gamble that John Swinney's taking here. A huge gamble. He's gambling that he will get that 2011 style majority of SNP, clear majority of SNP MPs. He was gambling that he'll get that, and if he doesn't, it'll be Scotland's cause that loses out. It won't be the SNP that loses out because they'll have got seats on the back of this, but or they'll have got votes anyway on the back of this. But the independence cause will have lost out badly because, as Richard says, it'd be impossible to claim voters support Scotland's right to choose when that question was not asked, and that's it. It's another dampener on the whole independence campaign, and that's one thing we really don't need. And you have to wonder, does John Swinney really care? I mean, would it suit him either way? Would it suit him if the SNP didn't get that clear majority? Obviously, it would suit him if it did. But if the SNP got enough seats to form the government with a little help from the Greens and maybe some other nominally pro-independence parties that managed to get seats, well, then what does it matter to him? He's back in the SNP in government. So what does he care that it's no longer possible to claim voters support Scotland's right to choose? No, it doesn't matter to him. But it certainly matters to the independence campaign because it means we've got another 5 years to wait before we can try and get things moving again by leveraging an election, which is the only time we have leverage. There was another bit. I had bits highlighted, but I've totally lost them. But I'm going to skip to what I know was the last of them. And this is his final paragraph, I think, that I was going to read. And Richard says, I'd rather we spent our time and energy thinking about the kind of country independence would allow us to become, rather than on endless debates on referendums and tactics. But it seems to me we can't fully concentrate on what independence can bring until we decide how we can get it. Getting the power to decide our own future is a better first step than ceding that power again to someone else. Until we decide how we can get it. Richard seems strangely to be in agreement with myself there, because I've been saying for some years now that it's the how of independence that matters. We have to define the how. We have to set out a plan. We have to identify a process. And so far, nobody has done that apart from myself. Apart from the Scottish UDI plan and the Manifesto for Independence, none of the parties have, or any of the yes groups, have actually spelled out a process. A lot of them claim to have done so, but if you look at what they're claiming is a plan, it just isn't. And we'll get to that in a moment. So Richard here, he wants to be talking about the vision thing. Okay, I understand that. It's great fun talking about how wonderful Scotland could be. And you're bound to get applause and clicks and likes and whatever if you're talking about that. You not so much if you start talking about the how. If you start talking about the process, the nuts and bolts, what will actually have to be done, then the people tend to switch off. And I'm afraid that's that what I saw on Saturday at the rally was people clapping and cheering for some of the most vacuous speeches I've ever heard. But they just managed to mention independence all the time and talk about how great it's going to be and we're going to do it. And yeah, but not one of them could describe the process. Not one of them could tell you exactly how they're going to do it. They don't know. And they don't know for one simple reason, because they haven't thought beyond the election. They haven't thought beyond getting elected. The politicians, it's all about getting elected. And there it stops. None of them have thought beyond that to how they're actually going to deliver on a manifesto commitment to restore independence. But then none of them are making that commitment. They say that they are, but when you look at the commitment itself, like for instance, the SNP, they say that they are a vote for the SNP is a vote for independence, but it isn't. A vote for the SNP is a vote for a Section 30 order request, demand, as they would put it. It's not a vote for independence. It's a vote for handing Westminster a veto on the exercise of our right of self-determination. It's handing them a veto that they're not entitled to, that they should not have. And in the process, it's denying the sovereignty of of Scotland's people, because it's making it Westminster to be sovereign, is validating the doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty, because Swinney, when he asks, he's putting Westminster above the people of Scotland. Remember, he's claiming that the people of Scotland have already voted for independence. Eh? We've already voted for independence. And then he says he has to go to Westminster and ask them if it's okay. Yeah, hang on a minute. Or even if he says we've only voted for a referendum, he's still going to Westminster and asking them if it's okay. What the hell is that about? That's, well, there's not another word for it. It's treachery. It's treachery when you're denying the sovereignty of of Scotland's people, and you're validating the alien doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty. You're putting Westminster above the people of Scotland. What else can that be other than treachery? It is treachery. Moving on. How long have we got to go? The other thing that I wanted to have a look at today was quite interesting thing from I'm going to say Graham McCormick, because it was him that posted it, and I'd got hold of a copy previously, and I'd had a look at it, and this is I'm going back to calling it the McCormick resolution. The McCormick resolution that was So the one that was supported by 43 parties, Tweeddale, the Tweeddale resolution was the other one. I'm sure you know what one I'm talking about. There were only two, and nobody ever talks about the other one, which is the Newington resolution. Nobody talks about it, especially not the National. They refused to mention it. And when I mentioned it in a comment earlier today, that comment was removed, disallowed, with the usual community standards excuse. But they seem quite determined to kill the Newington resolution, and I just wonder why that is. Could it be because it's the one that actually threatens the SNP leadership, whereas Graham McCormick's one, I don't think the leadership see that as much of a threat at all. Not even the amendment. Now, it's not an amendment to their own resolution. What I believe has happened is that the conference committee has knocked back their original resolution, which, if you remember, it said it was a resolution to make the the list vote a de facto referendum on independence, and it was basically the same as the SNP, because it ended with negotiations with Westminster. It didn't actually say Section 30, but then neither does John Swinney. None of them use the term Section 30 if they can avoid it, because they know how toxic it has become. But negotiations with Westminster can only mean a Section 30 referendum, because that is all Westminster would ever negotiate. They won't even negotiate that. There's almost certain that the request will be turned down, and John Swinney has no plan for what happens then. No plan other than just to sit in his job for another 5 years and build up his pension. But he's no plans for Scotland's cause if Westminster says no. But as I said a moment ago, he's no business asking them in the first place. The exercise of our right of self-determination has nothing to do with Westminster, and Westminster should have nothing to do with it. It is entirely an internal matter for Scotland. And the way Swinney is kowtowing to Westminster, the way he's bending the knee and touching the forelock to the British state, is frankly disgusting. And I'm ashamed that he's our first minister. And the 9 steps is now what Graham McCormick is talking about. 9 steps to independence. And if I've got it right, this is not a new resolution. This is being put forward as an amendment to the leadership resolution. That's the resolution submitted under the names of John Swinney and his deputy Keith Brown. And this is being submitted as an amendment. I frankly can't see it getting very far. Unless it's going to be edited down in some way. It's rather rambling and unspecific. I've picked out a few bits that I think are worth commenting on. So try and bear with me. The first thing is the huge contribution. I don't know if you can see this on your screens. I don't know if it's big enough, but first it says that SNP activists from Oban and Lorne, Tweeddale and Helensburgh set themselves the task of crafting a resolution combining all the steps to deliver independence even if the UK government does not cooperate. So they're going to deliver independence. This is the theory. They're going to deliver independence without the consent and cooperation of the British state. Just a wee bit further down the page, we find the group also rejected a unilateral declaration of independence, UDI. They rejected it as Scots are wary of adventurous politics, which the term conveys. But have you spotted the contradiction? Uh, deliver independence even if the UK government does not cooperate. What can that possibly be but UDI? So, what Graham McCormick is suggesting is that it can go down the UDI route so long as we don't call it UDI. Well, we can be damn sure that unionists and the British government will call it UDI, and they will then heap on all the negative associations that they've been building up over the term UDI ever since the Rhodesia thing in the mid 60s, mid 1960s. And they will use that because it is UDI. It's UDI. If you're doing it without the consent and cooperation of the British state, it is by definition UDI. Saying that you're not calling it UDI doesn't help. This is why when I developed the plan, the Scottish UDI plan, I specifically said it must be called UDI. Excuse me. The throat's a bit rough from trying to talk above the noise on Saturday. It's already quite weak from about COVID some years back, and it doesn't take the strain very well. What was what was I saying? It's UDI. It is UDI, and I specifically said that we would use the term UDI, but to take ownership and put our own associations on it, so that our own positive associations. So they're not getting off to a very good start with this. Amendment here, because right at the start we get this huge contradiction. The next thing that I have highlighted is how do you hold a vote of the electorate which demonstrates beyond doubt the will of the Scottish people to either stay in the Union or dissolve it without Westminster's consent? Well, I'll tell you how you do that. You do that with a proper constitutional referendum. If you're looking for putting the matter beyond doubt, if you're looking for a conclusive result, then a de facto referendum, a pretend referendum, is never going to do it. Now, I've written a blog article about this, why a de facto referendum can't be on the issue of independence. And it is simply that it cannot be conclusive enough. And I don't want to get into that just now. It's in the article. I will post a link to it, and I explain there all the reasons why the 2026 election cannot be a de facto referendum on independence. And moving on to the next one, it's because it can't be conclusive. It can't be conclusive. You're not putting it beyond doubt at all. It's not beyond doubt. It's got to be beyond question. It's got to be such that nobody can question it. That it is an absolute clear-cut, undeniable result, unquestionable result. Because if there's the ability to question it, if there's something questionable about it, then we will have conflict, we will have doubt, and that is the one thing that we want to avoid, and we desperately want to avoid. We must have a conclusive result, and we can only get that in a proper constitutional referendum. And I've also set a criteria or suggested criteria for a proper constitutional referendum. Suggested criteria hoping to prompt a discussion about what constitutes a proper constitutional referendum. But I never did get that discussion. It wasn't started because that's about process and it's about the detail. It's about the nuts and bolts. Nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody just wants to talk about how wonderful it will be once independence is restored. Nobody wants to talk about how we go about it. Although Graham McCormick obviously has ambitions in that direction, but I'm afraid he's just he's not getting too very far with it. The next bit. While the Scottish Parliament cannot hold a referendum on a reserved matter, obviously it lacks the legislative competence, and as I've been saying for a long time, legislative competence is key. While the Scottish Parliament cannot hold a referendum on a reserved matter, the Scotland Act, which created the current Scottish Parliament, did not state that the actual vote at a Holyrood election could only be used to elect a devolved Scottish Parliament. Is that the case? Well, I'm not quite sure. Just let's take a look here. What does the Scotland Act say? It says the day on which the poll at an ordinary general election for membership of the Parliament. Now, you may say, okay, that is not that stating that the actual vote could only be used to elect a devolved Scottish Parliament, but it's coming damn close, and you can be sure that the British state and the Unionists will use that. They will say, no, the Scotland Act specifies election for membership of the Scottish Parliament. That's what it's for. That's what it says in the Scotland Act. So a de facto referendum is already a bit iffy. Moving on. The period between, this is a period between, so I may as well read this whole paragraph. The group decided that not just one, but two dates must be integral to the amended resolution. The first is the Holyrood election day, 7th May 2026. Obviously, it's when the Scottish electorate will decide whether to leave the Union. And the second is the 1st of May 2027, when the Union will be dissolved. The period between is to allow the former UK government to negotiate the dissolution. Well, hang on a minute. How come you're asking the UK government or former UK government about dissolution if the people have already said? Comes back to what I said earlier about John Swinney. If it's been a vote for independence, then that's it. It's decided. There's nothing to negotiate with the British state. Nothing. We move on then to a post independence settlement, the divvying up, if you like, the divorce settlement. But we don't negotiate the actual dissolution. That has already been decided. So that is a massive flaw here. I'm talking a massive flaw. I don't know what Graham is thinking of there. Moving on to the next one, fifth step, how to get us over the line. To implement a mandate to dissolve the union requires a delivery mechanism. As neither the Scottish Parliament nor the British Civil Service are empowered to be the mechanics for independence, another organisation is required. Is it? Why? If you already have an entity that is actually capable of doing it, why create another entity, a, a pseudo parliament, if you like, which has no legislative competence? Why go to all the bother of creating that separate entity which cannot have legislative competence ever, when you already have there a parliament which could have legislative competence if it but took it? It's the taking of it. The parliament can take that. So the parliament that exists could be the Parliament of Scotland. It just has to say, and we have to say, if we give the Parliament a mandate, if we use the 2026 election to give the Parliament a mandate to assert legislative competence in constitutional affairs, then that then is the Parliament of Scotland. Because if you have powers over the Constitution, you have powers over everything. And we can get away with doing that because we cite it as a matter of human rights. We say we're doing it primarily or initially, at least, in order to that the people of Scotland may exercise our right of self-determination. There being no other way. There is no other mechanism. So this is how we have to do it. The Scottish Parliament has to assert legislative competence so that the Scottish Parliament can legislate for a proper constitutional referendum. Another organisation isn't required, is surplus to requirements, and setting it up just adds massive complications to the whole process. Moving on, the leader of the SNP will appoint the IDU in consultation with other Independence Party leaders. That's a bit dodgy here, and it's one of the points that come up regarding a lot of the statements that have been here. There's this critical need for unanimous agreement among all the figures involved at numerous stages. There's this need for agreement, and it's critical. If that agreement isn't forthcoming, then the whole thing stalls or falls apart. I'm not quite sure what happens in those circumstances. It's not specified. But we find this need for agreement, but creating this new organization, this new entity, and bringing people into it, getting people to participate in it, and it's going to require agreement at every stage, and that is an added complication. With the Scottish UDI plan, we only need agreement among the parties once, and that's at the outset. That is when we use the 2026 election to get a mandate for the Scottish Parliament asserting legislative competence over constitutional affairs. That is the only point where they need to agree, because the idea is that they all adopt an identical manifesto for independence. That introduces the binary element that you need for a de facto referendum. And it's not a referendum on independence. It is a referendum on basically on our human right of self-determination. So it's a referendum on the powers of the Scottish Parliament. It's a referendum on taking back the Parliament, taking it back. It is our Parliament. It was taken from us in 1707. In 1909, it was returned to us in chains, the chains of devolution. By striking off the chains of devolution, we get the legislative competence, and by asserting the legislative competence, we strike off the chains of devolution. So it's a win-win. It's an obvious way to go. Uh, and after that, the parties are already in agreement. They've already adopted this manifesto for independence. So they're in agreement all of the way through. There's no need for any further agreement in order to proceed. There will need to be that a bill will have to go through the Scottish Parliament, and obviously all the by then there would be genuine pro-independence parties because they've adopted the manifesto for independence. Uh, but the fact that they've adopted the manifesto for independence means that they're going to be in agreement about passing this bill. There may be disputes over some details in the bill. Will be discussions over things like of the interim constitution, but the agreement is already there. There's no need to look for new agreement among a huge number of people from different groups and organisations at every stage, at numerous times throughout the process. No need for that. And the need for that is a serious weakness because we've seen these politicians in action where they're supposed to be on agreement about something really fundamental, such as Scotland's constitutional status, and yet they fight like cats and dogs, especially when it comes round to election time. I mean, look at the SNP and Alapa. They're forever at each other's throats. It's not the politicians at each other's throats, it's their supporters. They're having a spat at the moment. I think it's just an ongoing spat. This matter of getting agreement is that's a serious weakness. The IDU, by the way, is what they're calling this the Independence Delivery Unit. It is the unit that's actually supposed to deliver independence. And it's appointed in consultation with other independence party leaders. The IDU members' purpose, this is back to Graham McCormick's amendment here. The IDU members' purpose is to quickly agree a frame. Quickly, yeah, agree. There's another wee giggle for you. Quickly agree a framework and to do tasks to get us over the line of first securing a majority vote and second dissolving the union using their individual and collective expertise. So this is a bit odd. I don't see how. I honestly don't see how this individual and collective expertise can be a substitute for legislative competence. Okay, these people, they're bright people. They may come up with some ideas, but the power to implement those ideas still lies with the Scottish Parliament. So until you take over the Scottish Parliament, until you take it back, you're not going to be able to do anything about this. So I'm a bit dubious about that. Sixth step, political stewardship. As the current Scottish Parliament cannot legislate for independence, it is necessary to create a new institution. This is another new one to steward the work of the IDU and give political legitimacy to its work. That's okay. It recognises that legislation is necessary, but expects the union to be dissolved by an entity with no legislative competence. And the solution is right there in front of them. If the Scottish Parliament doesn't have the necessary legislative competence, then take it. Because it'll have to be taken at some point. All of this is just farting around before you get to the point where you have to take legislative competence. This alternative pseudo parliament and pseudo government that they talk about setting up, they would have to take legislative competence at some point. If they were going to take over from the Scottish Parliament, they would have to take legislative competence. They would have to assert it. Somebody has to assert it. Why not just use the Parliament that's already there? Just batter the existing nominally pro-independence parties and politicians into line, and force them into line, and get them to assert legislative competence. That is it. That's the job done. This is like 8.5 of Graham McCormick's 9 steps, all taken care of in a oneer. I don't see where he's going with this at all. And once they've set up this new institution, they're going to call it the Provisional Government of Scotland. Right. And so the public won't accept UDI, but they'll be quite relaxed about provisional government. Maybe not, Graham. Maybe not. It's still going to be called UDI, and I can guarantee you the British propagandists will have a field day with provisional government too. And why bother? Why bother setting up a provisional government when you already have a government? All that's required is for us to take back that government, and then we can take back the Parliament. We take back that government by using the leverage that we have in the 2026 election to force all the nominally pro-independence parties to adopt the same manifesto for independence. And that manifesto for independence begins with Parliament asserting legislative competence over constitutional affairs, which is an effective declaration of independence. It is, if you like, a de facto declaration of independence. So it also does the job of getting independence. It just does it in a subtle and clever way. It doesn't do it explicitly. It does it by a process that allows us to cite human rights as a way of leveraging it. I don't see how a provisional government of Scotland can serve any purpose. Especially, let's move on. The provisional government will include all independence supporting MSs elected in 2026. Hang on a minute. So you set up this separate entity, right? Because the existing entity can't do it. The Scottish Parliament is not the building. The Scottish Parliament is the people that sit in it. Right. So you're saying the Scottish Parliament cannot do it. You're saying these people cannot do it, but then you take them out of the existing Scottish Parliament and you put them in a provisional Scottish government or whatever, and all of a sudden, it's that I don't get this at all. They're the same people. Why not just leave them where they are, but get them to do what you want them to do? Why do you go to all this trouble of shuffling them around between different entities? And the whole government, a government consisting of all of the independence supporting MSPs, that could be a lot of. That could be a big government, and if it's not, as if it's not big enough, they're proposing to add 100 members chosen by the independence supporting parties, apportioned in terms of their share of the popular vote to deliver independence. That's the vote in the List campaign. So there's a measure of democratic legitimacy there, but it's in an organisation, a pseudo parliament, a pseudo government. There doesn't seem to be a distinction between parliament and government here. It talks about a provisional government, but then it talks about bringing in all the MSPs. And what about the unionists, MSP? They were elected as well. They have the equal status. I don't. I'm really perplexed by this. I'm just not at all sure how it's going to work. I'm sure there are a lot more holes in it than I'm actually finding here. This is thing. I'm finding things that look like holes, but at some point somebody is going to take those what appear to be holes and say, yeah, I am, and that is a hole. And if there's a hole, then what you can expect is that the unionists will stick their finger in it and pick at it until it's a massive gaping gap. This is what they did in the 2014 referendum. It wasn't Project Fear, it was Project Doubt. They didn't win it by scaring people off. They won it by working on people's doubts. People had a natural response, a doubt when presented with the possibility of something new. And then they sought to aggravate that. And then they sought to introduce new doubt, other doubts, an extended catalogue of doubts by constantly questioning everything and constantly claiming that they hadn't received answers or satisfactory answers. They will use the same tactics if this is adopted with all these holes in it. I mean, starting right from that contradiction, it's not UDI, but it is. We can't. That's a hole right away. All the independent supporting MSPs elected in 26 and 100 members chosen by the independent supporting parties. That's going to be another scrabble for places. And those scrabbling for places, that tends to get a bit unseemly. So I wouldn't be looking forward to that. The seventh step is finance. Excuse me, just a moment. And this one's just far too vague. Financing the central political campaign, the work of the IDU, that's the Independence Delivery Unit, and the provisional government to deliver independence must be addressed. The group is firmly of the opinion that no funds from the current Scottish government be used. I don't think they're going to be offering. Not just because the unionists will complain, they would have a justifiable complaint, but also because it challenges the financial commitment of the independence support. What is trying to say there, without actually saying it, is that we, the independence supporters, independence activists, we will be expected to dip into our pockets and fund this exercise. And I can see that snowballing. It's the sort of exercise that grows arms and legs, and the expenses snowball, the costs snowball. I'm very dubious about that. It would be. It could end up being a great deal of money, and I'm not at all sure. I know that the independence movement is great at coming up with money when money's needed. Not so much now, and I think we all know the reason why that is. But this has to be a reliable source of finance, and I don't think that it could be a reliable source of finance if the costs keep increasing. There's a limit to how many times you'd be able to go back to the public and ask for more money. It is envisaged that the members of the IDU, Independence Delivery Unit, and the provisional government will be unpaid although the small secretariat required to serve them will be remunerated. So that's asking rather a lot of people. It's asking all the MSPs. Presumably, they have to quit their role in the Scottish Parliament and therefore their salaries in order to join this provisional government. And they're going to be they're going to be asked to work unpaid. I mean, these people have mortgages and all the rest of it. People live according to their means or beyond their means. People don't really, they can't afford. Nobody really can afford to simply have their income cut off. So it's a problem. It's another problem or potential problem. And paying for the secretariat, it says small secretariat. That's one of the things that I can envisage growing. The union will be dissolved not later than 1st of May 2027, whether the former UK government agrees, negotiates or not. How? We still haven't had described to us the process of how this will be done. It can't be. It can't happen automatically just because you've put it on your diary. You know, oh look, this is dissolution date. There we go. It doesn't work that way. Dissolving the union will require an act of the Scottish Parliament or the Parliament of Scotland, as it will be. But the Parliament of Scotland, as Graham McCormick envisages it, is a pseudo-parliament which lacks all legislative competence. So there's a big difference between a real elected parliament asserting legislative competence and an unelected or not directly elected or not specifically elected pseudo-parliament asserting legislative competence. There's a big difference there, and that is seriously problematic. It simply doesn't describe the process. Just saying that it will happen is no good. You want to know how. And the how is a bill being drafted, which is a proposal for the dissolution of the union, subject to a referendum of the people of Scotland, subject to the agreement of the people of Scotland. And that proposal will have all the details, such as when will the Independence Day and what the interim constitution will be, and how the confirmatory referendum will be run. All of that will be in the proposal. And once that is passed, that becomes an act of Parliament subject to the referendum. The Parliament is then authorised to hold that referendum so that we can properly exercise our right of self-determination. That's how it happens. It's not going to happen through some pseudo-parliament that has questionable democratic legitimacy. Not going to happen. On that day, the former devolved Scottish Parliament will end and its functions will be taken over by the Parliament of Scotland, comprising all members of the former devolved Parliament. There we go again. It's going to all this palaver of setting up this other entity just to move people across and then make it what the original Parliament already is. What is the point of all of this? What is the point? And that's it. I may have rambled a bit there, but I'm all the time reading this, and I have now read it a dozen times, and I'm all the time finding new things and thinking, how does that work? How do you get all that agreement? And why are you doing this? I honestly, The very fact that there's that contradiction in the first place, the fact is that there's contradiction where it is clearly, by definition, a proposal for UDI. Uh, there's that contradiction that is saying that they reject UDI. That's an obvious contradiction. That fact alone makes me think, or it tends to make me think, and I don't like saying this, it tends to make me think that there's not much thought being put into this. It looks clumsy. It looks as if it hasn't been thought through. I'm not at all sure. I'm not at all sure that they've really applied themselves to this. I think it's something that's been devised uh, in a bit of a rush, just to follow up on the resolution being left off the agenda. They had to do something, and the conference committee has said, "Well, why not do it as an amendment to the leadership resolution?" And the leadership would be fine with that because all they have to do is beat the amendment. And there's no alternative is being proposed. So long as they beat an amendment, which they could probably do quite easily, they've got the votes of all the salaried delegates and a big chunk of the other delegates who are party loyalists. So I think they wouldn't have much trouble in beating an amendment. And once that amendment is done, that's it. It's over. Once it's beaten, it's over. That's it. Their resolution goes through, and we are set for another 5 years of nothing happening, another 5 years of inaction, another 5 years of pusillanimous procrastination, uh, another 5 years of excuses before we start again on the promises when there's another election rolling around. Uh, to be honest, people, I am tired of it. I am very, very tired of it. And I honestly, the way things are at the moment, and judging by the way people at I know it's maybe not a good way to judge, but judging by the way the people at the rally in Edinburgh, judging by the way they responded to these vacuous, meaningless, banal election speeches coming from the people on the platform, the way people reacted, cheering and applauding, I think people are going to be satisfied with just about anything. They can be sold just about anything. People are so desperate now for something on the constitutional issue after 10 years more of nothing, that they're just going to jump at whatever they're offered. And that's a bad mistake. It's a very bad mistake because what you're being offered is not going to be what you want. So yeah, I'm really worried, and I'm on the verge of giving up hope. Because the only way out of this that I can see, the only way is with the Scottish UDI plan. Uh, Graham McCormick's resolution just won't cut it. Sorry, his amendment. It just won't cut it. And even if it was passed, I see far too many problems implementing this. And quite frankly, I don't even see them getting it on the agenda because of the reasons that I've gone over today. Anyway, it's just about the end of our time for today. I'm back on Sunday when Stephen Duncan will be joining me again for Confute Corner, which what is it we're doing this? Oh, we're doing. I think it's voting strategies that we're looking at, which I'm not keen on. But it's voting strategies, and Stephen will be doing the number crunching on that after I've had my little Sunday morning moan, probably about something that's happened or something that's been in the news that day. So that's Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. I'll be back with you then. Until then, goodbye.